Uh, this one? Maybe? Sound? Ah. There we go. Can you hear me? Maybe. I think I'm very quiet. Let me give it a bump. Hello? There we go. A little bit better. And I'm dying. Hello, hello. There we go. We're there. We're back. Oh, now there is no me. Oh, there we go. Dear. Of course, it's like the earliest race in the actual universe, and I've got everything just not working. There we go. All of it just decided this morning not to work. And yesterday we had a power cut. So it's all falling apart over here in Norwich. I've disappeared in qualifying. I didn't mean to. I literally set like 4 alarms. I set an alarm on my phone, I set an alarm on my alarm clock, and I set an alarm on my iPad. But because there was a power cut, none of it seemed to work. Like, my phone didn't go off. I think I need a new phone because it's so quiet. Like, even when I play like videos on it, it's really, really quiet. I think just the speakers are gone. I have had it for like 10 years. And then because it was a power cut, all the clocks reset themselves. But we're there. We're there. Thank you, Sir HC, for subscribing to the channel. The tier 1 sub. Appreciate it. Over on the Twitch. Hopefully Landon crashes Max wins. Would certainly open it up in terms of the championship if that were to happen, wouldn't it? Like, if we look at the championship standings, we can see that actually it would be very interesting indeed if Lando Norris did not finish this Grand Prix. Had to just stay up. Any alarms I sleep through? I think that must have been what happened because I went out the evening before because it was my birthday. So I went out just for like a meal with family, and I feel like I must have just slept straight through whatever alarms I set, and then the alarms I set on like the proper alarm clocks, which are the ones that are like fail safe, will always wake me up because they're blaringly loud. They reset themselves because I had a power cut. It was one of those. But yeah, in terms of the championship, Lando Norris doesn't make it through today. It would certainly up the tension a little bit. You know, he's got a 24-point gap to Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen needs a miracle at this point. You know, 49-point gap to Max Verstappen. Even if Verstappen wins and Norris DNFs, like 25-point swing, that only puts Verstappen to within where Oscar Piastri is. So Piastri is right there behind. Well, thank you for the happy birthday messages. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. It was very fun. It was good. Thank you, Sarah, for the happy birthday as well. And the super chat. Amazing. What do I think about Oscar's downfall? I mean, I made a little video about it sort of a few races ago and just talked about how, from my perspective, all I can think it might be is, you know, first and foremost, the fact it's his 3rd season in Formula One. He's super inexperienced compared to the drivers he is fighting against for this championship. You know, Verstappen's a 4-time world champion. Lando Norris has a lot more experience in Formula One compared to his teammate. And Lando Norris has been his teammate the whole time, right? This whole 3 years that Oscar's been there. Lando's also been learning the same things about this car, but from a more experienced perspective. So it's always going to be really tough for Oscar to win the championship anyway. Then he had the lead, and I think that played into a lot of people thinking, oh, you know, Lando Norris having a bad start to the season. Then Lando Norris, as the form starts falling in his favor, has that DNF in Zandvoort. But actually, if you look at around Zandvoort, the few races before and the few races after Zandvoort, Lando Norris was the informed McLaren driver. Like, Lando Norris was closing that gap to Oscar Piastri and was getting closer and closer to him. What was it? 9 points going into the summer break. And then would have been, what? If Lando would have finished second, would have again been a lot closer. What? 16 points between the two of them. So it was an awkward one. But I think Lando Norris's form, that DNF really helped Oscar Piastri out and made it stand out a bit more. But Lando Norris was always the informed McLaren. Then I think they won the Constructors' Championship. And since they've won the Constructors' Championship has been the real dip for Piastri, really. You know, outside of Azerbaijan, where it was his mistake. Then they won the Constructors' Championship the race after, and that was when his real dip started. You would say, like, the US and Mexico were more surprising to be off the pace. And I think the situation at McLaren is just, once they won the Constructors' Championship, they maybe said to the two teammates, like, you are now fully separate, and some of the logistics that maybe Lando Norris shared with Oscar earlier on in the season, or some of the setup that Lando Norris would have shared with Oscar earlier on in the season, probably just started to give Oscar Piastri less information, to be honest, right? If you're battling in a championship with somebody, you really don't want to give them the information that you've got about the car setup and about how you're going to go about the race weekend, because you literally want to beat to them. And once the Constructors' Championship is done, there's no emphasis on the team to be like, no, even though you know you're going for a championship together, you still need to share this information because we still need to secure the Constructors' Championship too. Like, we're still a team. Once the Constructors' Championship is done, you're not really a team anymore. Like, the team side of things goes out of the window, because it doesn't matter to McLaren if they win the Constructors' Championship by 1,000 points or by 1 point. It's like they've still won it and they still get the prize money for it, and they're able to talk to brands in the same way and say, look, you are sponsoring the #1 team in the sport next season, so it's going to cost you this much. I think it's that, to be honest. I think they've just been sharing less information with Oscar Piastri from Lando Norris's side of the garage. And I'd love to. Can I show the race podiums? I cannot. That is still very much copyrighted. What's the weather looking like for the race? Looking dry. Looking dry. That was another thing, right? I can't remember the last stream I've missed. It must be years ago at this point. Like, I'm live for every single qualifying and race, and sprint race and sprint qualifying. And I cannot remember the last one that I missed. Like, certainly not this year, last year, or maybe even not even 2023. Apart from possibly the ones where I was on the last lap, but then I was still technically covering the race because I was over on the last lap. So yeah, I cannot remember the last race I missed. And then we have an absolute banger for qualifying. Like, the first wet qualifying in over a year, because Brazil 2024 was the last time we had a wet qualifying. And it was insane. And I was like, yeah, that's my kind of luck. Anyone who knows me will know that I'm, like, slightly cursed. I talk about how good Isaac Hadjar is, then Kimi Antonelli gets podiums, that kind of thing. I make a video about the 2026 drivers, and then 26 drivers are, like, announced the day after, which completely changes how that video would have looked. It's like, I am incredibly unlucky when it comes to those kind of things. So I can completely understand why we missed the best quality of the season, probably. Exactly. They used wets. Lewis Hamilton went out P20. Like, it was all happening. Big crash for Alex Albon. Crazy ends to qualifying as well, where Lando Norris puts in, like, one of the best laps ever until the final corner, where he made a mistake, and then even with the mistake is still able to hold on to pole position. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. It was just, how on earth have I got to the point where this is where we're at? So I went live and went back to bed. Regret it. Me too. I missed it. I was gutted, man. I was absolutely gutted. Full wet tires. Exactly. Full wet tires is insane. When's the last time we saw full wet tires on a Formula One car? Like literally never. And it was weird because some of the cars, obviously, we never get to see the wet tire, but actually, some cars were really suited to it. Like, I think if we had more wet weather qualifying where the full wet tires were used, I think some of the big teams would struggle a lot more. And I think actually the playing field would be really quite interesting to see because it's clear that some teams have actually got a setup that works for the full wet tires and spent time actually developing a setup that works for the full wet tires and then just don't ever get to use it. Lando almost been in the wall. Yeah, very true. Carlos, third place. Let's run for it. Right? Let's start at the top and work our way down. Finally, and I say finally because it does feel like a lot of the time we say Lando Norris qualifying isn't quite there, or, it's never been one of his strongest parts of his game. And the fact that, wet weather tires have never really been Lando Norris's best thing ever. Like, think back to Russia 2021, where it's like, could have picked up his first win in the sport and then it started raining and it all went wrong. Like wet weather tires have never been Lando's like strongest suit, I would say. But it was a brilliant lap, like one of the best laps you're going to see. Could have been like a second clear of the rest of the field had he not made a tiny mistake at the end. And like mistakes were going to happen in those conditions when you're going from the full wet to the intermediate, still so slippy. The track is so green, like there's water and puddles everywhere. So I think it's just, Lando Norris at his absolute best. And Lando Norris finally kind of proving a few of those doubters wrong and properly clicking into gear when it matters in qualifying, right? A lot of the time we see him P1 in Q1, P1 in Q2, and then drop to like P4, P5. And you're like, you had it. You had the pace right there, but you couldn't do it when it was quite, necessary to do so. No, yesterday did it really, really solid and looks just unstoppable at this point, Lando Norris. Leading the championship, good gap to his teammate. Is going to be more than a win over his teammate at the end of this Grand Prix if it finishes like this. Like, he is looking very, very comfortable indeed and could even go on to win the championship in Qatar. Of course, we saw Max Verstappen win the championship in Qatar a couple of years ago during the sprint race. Lando Norris can't win it during the sprint race because I doubt he'll be 50 points clear of his teammate. I do think Oscar Piastri will still get some points today and get some points in the sprint in Qatar. But I could certainly see him winning the championship by the end of the Qatar Grand Prix if he is on this kind of form. And Piastri needs to be within 25 points of his teammate. And it doesn't look like he's going to be within that 25 come the end of the Qatari Grand Prix next weekend. Max Verstappen qualified second, just always does the business, doesn't he, Max Verstappen? That Red Bull car, I know we had the speculation around can he get back into the championship fight. It was always going to be a big, big ask. I think the double DNF in Austin sprint kind of opened the door a little bit. If that had been a double DNF in the Austin race, it would have been very different because it would have been a 25-point swing rather than an 8-point swing. And that didn't quite end up playing out. So I think Max Verstappen got a little bit unlucky there in that there was a sprint that weekend and therefore the collision happened in the sprint rather than the race. But yeah, Max has done a valiant job to get anywhere close to the top of the standings, considering that Red Bull car has been so on and off depending on the weekend. And the fact that, again, he's the closest competitor to Lando Norris going into turn one. Never say never with Max Verstappen. I'm sure he's going to move himself up the inside and make Lando Norris make a decision. So we'll see what happens with Max Verstappen going into turn one today. Carlos Sainz has really clicked. Like, there was a lot of negativity and maybe a lot of criticism around Carlos Sainz, particularly in the first half of the season, when it just didn't quite feel like he was getting there with the Williams car. And it was a bit like, he's made this move to Williams, but Alex Albon is still the clear number one there. Like, Alex Albon was putting together the performances when it mattered and picking up points consistently. And absolutely dominating the driver standings in terms of best of the rest, still is. And Alex Albon is still going to finish best of the rest in the driver standings, unless Carlos Sainz literally goes back to back to back podiums or something ridiculous. But I think now we're seeing that car fully click with Carlos, and maybe they're trying some different setups and bits and pieces on both cars because they know that next season is the real one that matters. But at the same time, it feels like Carlos just needed half a season to really get into the rhythm of this Williams car versus the Ferrari. You know, it's a new engine, it's a new build, it's very different circumstances, I would imagine, compared to the Ferrari garage in a Williams garage. So Carlos finally clicking. And actually, again, like I said with Lando Norris, like Carlos Sainz, not really one of the drivers that I think of when I think wet weather conditions will be able to deliver. Actually just turned it on, didn't he, Carlos? It was brilliant driving from him, and has already got a podium once this year. Can he make it 2 podiums this year? I can't see why not. Like, it's going to be tricky to overtake. I think George Russell behind is going to be a real bastard for Carlos Sainz to deal with, to be honest, because we know that Mercedes car has pace. Like, George Russell probably should have been be right there alongside like Lando Norris, to be honest, or even ahead of Lando Norris. We know that the Mercedes car is quick around here. George Russell having a problem during that final part of qualifying with his steering, which then cost him a considerable chunk of time. So that's why George Russell starts in 4th. Of course, won here last year. And we know the Mercedes car loves these conditions. I think also the fact it was maybe wet didn't play into George Russell's favor, but now it's dry again. I think George Russell's the one to keep an eye on there in 4th place, isn't he? Oscar Piastri 5th, just has to go balls to the wall. Like, just has to go down. Like, last opportunity, really, because as I say, Qatar, he could easily find himself 25 points behind if he gets to the end of that Qatar Grand Prix, because he's already beyond the wins worth of points behind. Lando Norris just needs to outscore him today and then outscore him a little bit in the sprint race, and then could be all over for Oscar Piastri by the time he gets to the end of Qatar, unless he's able to do something really special this afternoon in Las Vegas. Liam Lawson starting 6th place, solid from the RB team. You know, both Lawson and Hadjar qualifying well. They have had really good qualifying pace of the RB cars throughout the season fairly consistently. It's 50-50 as to sometimes whether they turn that into race pace, isn't it? And they do often throw in a bit of a weird strategy call along the season as well. So Liam Lawson starting 6th place, I think could do something really good from there. Fernando Alonso starting 7th. And I saw a few people mentioning Lance Stroll as well, who's starting down in 12th place. The fact that Stroll was the quickest of anybody on those full wet tires. Like, Aston Martin looked really good on those full wet tires, didn't they? It could have been like a Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso front row or something, had it been the wet weather conditions throughout, and had it not started to dry up a little bit towards the end and the intermediate tires coming on. So yeah, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, 7th and 12th. Be interesting to see what they can do from there, because they're like dry weather pace hadn't been insane throughout the free practice sessions, but they're in and around the points, so that's where they are. Charles Leclerc, just absolute travesty, down in 9th place once again. Like, the Ferrari not working for him. He even said afterwards, like, the Ferrari has never really worked for him in wet conditions. And he's always found that, well, particularly throughout his junior career, he always thought driving in the wet was one of his strong suits. Then he comes to Ferrari and just hasn't been able to deliver any time that the wet weather conditions have been in front of him. So starts in 9th place. At least it's not 19th like Lewis Hamilton. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not Charles Leclerc can do anything from 9th place. And Pierre Gasly also starts from inside of the points once again for Alpine. What is it with Alpine and just turning up like right at the end of the season? I know that Pierre Gasly also normally has a little bit of an uptick in form towards the end of a campaign. Like, he is usually quite good in these final few tracks, but ridiculous that every year Alpine seem to just like turn up with 3 races to go and go, oh yeah, we're actually a midfield car. So if you'd have done that throughout the entire season, you wouldn't be sitting in 10th place in the constructors by an absolute country mile. Like, it's ridiculous when Alpine sort of just turn up for the end. I'm really annoyed as well when they did it in 2022. Like in 2022, when they were going for fourth place versus McLaren, and then they nabbed it because they just turned up at the end of the season and McLaren decided to just fall away. Like, so annoying that Alpine have this ability to just be like, oh, final 3-4 races. Oh, we're actually okay. It's just like starting inside of the points for Pierre. I think he could do something pretty good from there, starting on the hard compound tires. Nico Hulkenberg starting just outside in 11th place. Again, it would be nice to see Hulkenberg get some points on the board. Like, I'm really enjoying the midfield battle that is going on between everybody this season, really. Ocon and Behrman starting 13th and 14th place, respectively, on the medium tyres for Haas. Again, the wet weather conditions, it was a little bit of an interesting qualifying for them. The pace was never perfect, but they could have maybe been a little bit higher than they were. It was an awkward one for the Hasses. Colapinto starting in 15th place. Let's hope he doesn't bang into the wall like he did last year. Alex Albon in the Williams, though, did indeed bang into the wall. Should have been much higher in terms of qualifying Alex Albon. That mistake. And it was, somebody was going to make one, right? It was one of those qualifying sessions where there was going to be a big mistake at some point, and it just had to fall to Alex Albon over everybody else. Kimi Antonelli also then dropping down in 17th place. There's been a few qualifyings like that for Kimi Antonelli, where he just hasn't quite been able to get the banker lap in or make it happen. Again, super wet conditions, a Las Vegas track he's never driven before. It was, a tough ask for Kimi Antonelli. And you could argue, well, the other rookies have done well, but Kimi Antonelli, yeah, I think had that been a dry qualifying, would have been way higher up in the board. Bortoletto down in 18th place. Lewis Hamilton, the slowest out on track of anybody. 19th place, though, as Yuki Tsunoda takes penalty to start from 20th. Just awkward for Lewis Hamilton, wasn't it? Got to the timing line and then didn't realize he'd got to the timing line, so gave up on the lap when he actually could have done one more lap at the end of Q3 and needed that lap as well because he was miles off of it. Twitch title says Brazil. I literally changed the Twitch title. Why does it still say Brazil? Oh, maybe I didn't click save or something. Thank you for letting me know. Let's switch over then to the multi-viewer race board. Have we got everything loaded? I think we do. The upside down pig track ready for us to go racing. A little bit of a mix in terms of tyres. The majority of the top 10, in fact, all of the top 10 going for the medium tyre. Nico Hulkenberg, the first man on the hard compound tyre. Then some mediums again with Stroll, Ocon and Behrman, Colapinto and Albon on the hard compound tyre. Kimi Antonelli starting on the soft compound tyre. So clearly thinking about going for some moves very early indeed is Kimi Antonelli. And deciding that actually the best way to defend is to attack. And now we're waiting. Oh, I just realized, have I started the short stream? I don't know if I have. It's too early in the morning for this, isn't it? Oh, no, we have started the short stream. That's fine. Oh, but it's the wrong one.